Hello and welcome everyone to our Fantasy Grounds Unity Saturday stream of map and image creation, and I'm Josh. And this is the stream where we go over all of our art-related news as well as demonstrations and tutorials on how to use the built-in image creation system right inside of Fantasy Grounds, as well as some use case scenarios and so on. We have a very robust set of tools right inside of Fantasy Grounds Unity for creating all of your maps and other image related creation systems, right? So, not just limited to map creation, but you can pretty much create anything that you want to inside of here. We have our new export feature, which allows you to export all of those images so that you can use them in a multitude of different ways, and we kind of go through all of that here as well. And in addition to that, we have countless ways that we can integrate a lot of the different aspects of actual play mechanics inside of our creations as well, with dynamic lighting, line of sight, and so on. So just a very robust tool. I'm always amazed when people aren't aware that this is even inside of Fantasy Grounds Unity, and it's a very huge feature here. So we do our best to explore those and make sure that everyone's aware of all of the great stuff that you can do in here. In fact, last week we finished up creating this neat nightclub scene, right? We did all kinds of cool effects. We created some images from scratch, including this turntable, which we built this completely from the ground up, just using some of the built-in tools inside of Fantasy Grounds. In fact, I don't believe that we used any sort of images whatsoever. Everything that was created, and we even created little parts of it, based off of an actual real-life image. And so we also created these simple speakers. So anything that you need, you can kind of create, export that as its own little image file. We have support PNG and JPEG exporting features. So you can use transparencies in your images themselves, and really the sky's the limit, right? We can really kind of create whatever we want to inside of Fantasy Grounds and kind of break through all of the issues that you might run into in other image creation elements, especially ones that are specifically kind of tailored to the RPG experience. So we'll be exploring this a little bit more today, going through a couple of things. I'm going to go through a couple of different use case scenarios for some new elements. And also, if you guys have any suggestions or if there's anything that you want to see created as we kind of move through this today, feel free to throw it right into chat. I'm more than happy to go down any exploration path and demonstrate how I would go about in any sort of scenario of creation inside of here. And one of the great things is that the tools inside of Fantasy Grounds are so robust and so open that there's always going to be several different ways that you can approach any scenario. I'm only going to be able to offer up how I would suggest doing it from my own point of view, but that's certainly not the only way to do it. So at any time, you can kind of create your own actual techniques by which that you create all of the different elements that you kind of desire inside of Fantasy Grounds. This uses a combination of animated images as well as the lighting system and so on and so forth. So if we turn off our lights here, you can kind of see that we have these animated elements in here. And this is like a water element animation, and then we have some stuff that's going to be coming out with these kind of like light elements that are moving through here. We even created our own like little graffiti elements and showed how you can do like your quick little drop shadow on something, as well as we placed lots of cool elements around and made this very industrial kind of scene here. Very, very fun. So we're going to be moving on from this today. Now we're going to call this one completed, and we can kind of shut this down, and we're going to start to move into some of these other areas. Now, one of the things that I have been doing, and you can see here, this is where we created our speaker here, is using this element, another image element, image workspace, to do all of our creation. and just exporting those. And thanks for letting me know, Hauser. I'll pass that along. I'm not really involved in any side of the marketing stuff or the product actual product implementation, but I'll certainly pass that along and let everyone know. Thank you. And so using these particular elements, and we can actually kind of minimize this here. So as we create throughout all of these different elements here, we can constantly, and let's clear up some of these areas in here. Oh yeah, we made our lich's study the other day. Again, doing a lot of that stuff of our. And this is one that we made a while ago. So let's close this down as well. Great. Oh, thanks, Paulette. Great. So now let's open up our assets, and I'm going to move this right over here. We'll create our little area over here. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my image listing here, and we can do right click, and I'm just going to create a new element here. And we can close this down. So yes, Bella Muerta rocks. Great. So do you guys have any suggestions on anything that you'd like to see created today? The first thing that I'm going to do, and I'm actually going to do this in a really brief kind of way. This is something that I kind of came up with the other day that I thought was pretty cool. And so I'm just going to show you something really quickly that you can kind of use to, if you're especially in like a sci-fi game, which I came up with a way of like creating or making an image seem as though it was like almost like a hologram. And let's see, we can actually take. Let's see what will be a good image for us to kind of use in this kind of scenario. Oh, you know what we can actually do? Let's kind of go into our. I think that we took. Then we do most of our exports into our campaign folder. So let's jump in here, and I think that we did one that is. Yeah, like an image like this. And so what I'll do is I'll just jump over into here, go into our stamp, and we're just going to drop this. And so we have this kind of exported ship that we had extracted from one of the other maps that we had made a while ago. And I'm going to just, we'll put it at a little bit of an angle or whatnot. And something like this. Oh, a modern vampire throne room? Yeah, maybe. Do you mean modern as in like Victorian, or do you mean modern as in like present day? Oh, so we got a question from Spencer real quick. Oh, present day, yeah. We might be able to do something like that. That sounds cool. Vampire the Masquerade. So if you do something, you're going to want to do that if you're going to be erasing a section of the wall, you're going to want to do that in two separate layers, Fensters. Not necessarily two separate layers, but in two separate instances so that they are separated. Otherwise, when you remove something, it's just going to create like a little alcove. And let me demonstrate that really quickly before we move on. So I'm just going to type in stone wall brush. And we'll grab something like this, and we'll do a circle here. Maybe let's do like this one. So I'll grab this, and I'll drop this into my stroke. And then we can type in wood floor something like this, we'll grab that one and we'll drop it in just like that. Okay, so if I were to draw out this element, right, where we have here and our floor, this is all one unit. As you can see here, if I were to move this, this is just going to recalibrate the fill in addition to the wall itself. Now, if I come in here, even if I come in and I do a subtraction, what this is going to do is it's always going to encase this in our stroke element, right? So even if I bring this in, this is going to constantly reroute that, so I can't do it in that way. So I'm just going to hit Control Z, and we're going to move everything back to where it was. So what you can actually do, and if you've already created this, and maybe you've done, let's do some additional elements, right? So maybe you've added and you've created all of this stuff, and you don't really want to like push this out into further elements here. What you can do is if you switch over into your mode here, right, and if you have this all lined up, what you're actually going to want to do is create this in two separate areas here, right? So if we come back over here, we can turn off our fill. And on this particular layer here, what I would actually do is recreate whatever I've done here, right? So if I were to do, let's turn off our stroke, and we can come back over to here, and you know, you want to create all of these particular elements and whatnot. But let's actually do this. I'm going to show you here. And now we can do this on the same layer here, and if I hold down, let's see, and we'll snap this into place here. But these are now two separate entities, right? You can see we have both this and this. Now what we can do, because these are two separate entities, is that we can interact with these separately. Now you're not going to want to necessarily just erase right here, because it's also going to take into account, and you can see the eraser seems to not want to do this, but is that the eraser is going to take into account the floor underneath as well. So if I erase, you can see it's going to recreate all of that stuff. So what we're going to actually want to do in these kind of scenarios is, what I like to do is to move this over to the side, and or you can just do it by the selection process. So if we, I'm going to hit Control Z all the way back to our original creation here. So all I have to do is, if I have this selected, right, all I need to do is to select maybe like these two elements here, and we can just delete them, and this is going to, well, that's going to delete a little bit further than I expected. And don't forget, you can always Control Z back, but maybe we just, yeah, delete one, and you can break that apart for you. But you're going to need to have these two elements completely separated in order to interact with the walls in such a way that you would expect, because the way that the stroke system works is it's always going to encompass what is before. And the reason for that is, if we go back here, let's just delete all of this stuff, and we can come back in here. Let's turn both of these back on again. When we add this out here, and we're in our add mode, you can see what it's doing here is it's recalculating the outside all over again. But if we switch back over to our subtraction mode, when we subtract on the inside, we also want this to kind of interact the same way as we move through these elements. But you can see that we can add in and make all of the different shapes that we want to. And in order for this to work properly, we need to make sure that this is always trying to add in that stroke around all of the different elements, right? And so, again, if we're trying to erase this section, what it's going to do is just bring that back to where it was originally, right? So the main thing that you want to do is you want to keep all of this stuff separated. And the easiest way to do that in here, right, is you can do a lot of this stuff if you're going to be adding in these elements like this and building it out kind of as it goes. Basically, what you want to be doing is thinking about it in a little bit of a different context, because we can always come back in and add in additional. We don't want to be in the subtraction mode. We want to be in normal mode because we don't want to add to it. But we can always bring back in, and we want to make sure that we have our end cap selected so that we know that it's. And we can build these elements on top of what we've already created for our doors and whatnot. And then we can come back in and we can move these wherever we wish. So it's just a little bit of a different way of thinking about the interaction between the way all of these different systems work. So when you're building out your base elements, you basically what you want to be doing is creating the basic shape of what you're doing, and then adding in the interior elements like this as you kind of go around. And what you really want to do is you want to make sure that you pay close attention to using the add, normal, and subtraction mode. And what these actually do, so if I switch this over, right, and turn the fill back on, and with the circle selected, if I go into the normal mode, it's not going to add into these elements, right? It's going to build right on top of it. And if I switch back over into edit mode, you can see that this is its own separate kind of entity, even though it's in the same layer itself, right? And if I double click on this, you can see that this is its own entity. So anything that you add new, it's going to add to that, right? And if I were to grab this and move this over here, I can switch back over, and if I go into my add mode, it's going to add to that, right? And so again, this is going to build this all into one entity because we've added it all together here. So you can kind of manipulate this in such a way where it's using those modes to help define all of the different elements. And again, I can create a new element, and this is going to be separated. If I come back into the ads scenario, right, and we can now add all of this together. So you can kind of build out all of these different sections, and when you switch over to these different modes, it recalculates all of that stuff for us. And then we can still come back in and we can subtract. And this is gonna, there's like a little bit of a funny thing there. So that sometimes like those single elements were get like pushed behind or whatnot. So you want to make sure that you build out all of your base shape. Like if we were going to be building like a castle and whatnot, we want to build out all of our base shape and then come back in later. Once that's all complete and all of our subtractions and additions are done, then we come back in and do all of our interior walls just as like those base ones. Yeah, yeah. If you ever have a use case scenario like that, it's pretty simple to kind of do, break through all of that stuff. So let's delete that. Let's go back into here. I'm just going to demonstrate something here really quickly. We're going to drop this guy down in here, and one of the cool things that we can kind of do with this, and we can do a whole bunch of different stuff here. But I'm going to do this on the per layer basis because I want to be able to show you guys and kind of switch back and forth. Normally, we can just use some of the alpha when we were to stamp it, but I'm going to do this on the layer side. And this is just so that I can kind of turn it up and down after the fact. With a stamp tool, once it's stamped, it's kind of stuck into its own particular element. But we're going to use a couple of effects layers here. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to take this image and we're going to make it seem a little bit different than it actually is. But here's our base image here that we're going to use. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to move into the effects layers here. And I'm actually going to use a couple of combination of effects layers. The first one that we're going to kind of use here, let's create a new effects layer. Is I'm going to go down and let's do an adjust colors. And I'm actually going to make this a little bit brighter. I want to make this seem a little bit more intense in its colors, but on the lighter side of things. And we're going to create a mask because I don't want it to interfere with my background here. So let's just create a mask here. And then I'm just going to do like a rough addition here where, as you can see, this is a little bit brighter than what I want. For some reason, when you add a mask, it changes the intensity of the elements that you've added. I'm going to do this like pretty roughly here. It doesn't have to be exact because I'm actually going to blur it out a little bit. See, like this, and then we can remove this section right here. Now let's blur that out so it kind of gives it like this nice little soft glow. And let's add in some of these additional elements around, bring this in. I actually did this the other day on one of my maps, and I thought it was a pretty cool little idea. And yeah, so we get this nice, like, soft kind of glowing element to it. Now, the really cool thing is once we have this base mask that we create, so I'd usually spend a little bit more time. I don't want to dwell on this for too long. I just do want a quick little demonstration of this before we move on to creating a new map area. But what we can actually do is now we can duplicate this, right? So if we duplicate this, what we actually did is we also duplicated the mask itself, right? And you can see this is much too intense. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to switch over to night vision. Night vision. And with this, what we can actually do is you can see this kind of makes it into this this image here. And if we turn this off, you can see we get a little bit more. So this is what I was going to talk about is adjustment in these particular areas. Now we can bring this down a little bit. And we can change the distortion of this so that we get some cool little kind of effects here. The intensity of it as well. More or less noise. So maybe we'll bring it down to something like this. And what we can actually do is we can change the order of these, right? So we can do our adjust colors here. And I can actually now change this. Let's maybe make it something like that. And you can see if we were to add in additional elements here, kind of how it's going to work. And like, see here, this is like the element. And you can see as it moves to the edge of the screen, you get some of this interaction here. And this is actually caused by, I think it's the distortion. No, it's maybe it's just a built-in kind of element here. But here you can take a really simple kind of image, and then you can make it into like this holographic, and then you could even do like holographic projection lines up and so on, and add this into some of the other elements here, right? We've done something like this a couple of times in the past. If we go over to our images, I think, yeah, it's something like this. As you can see, we did it on these display panels. But here you can actually do it, and here we did it in like this, like the reactor thing that's kind of going on there. But in this scenario, and what you can actually see is if we have elements painted in the background here, it's not going to just make it all dark, kind of like what we did here, right? Like, so the reason why this kind of makes it all black is because there's no other painted elements here in the background. So if we switch back over and we were to create something here in the background, let's drag this down in the bottom. We want to make sure we do it into the new area. You can see that all of this is going to be lit up, but we still get this very holographic kind of image that we've created here in the middle. So a neat little trick that you guys can do, especially in your sci-fi elements, you can take any image that you want to. Let's say, for example, if we were to do this exact same thing, but with another map, if you wanted to have a holographic projection of some other map or some other area, you can export that map, bring it back in, and do a same kind of similar technique and kind of create that. So neat little thing there. Let's delete all of this stuff, and we can go in to start building our modern vampire throne room. So let's talk about that. If we were to create this, I guess the first thing would be what makes it modern, right? I mean, if we think about what a room would be like today, I guess the closest thing that we could think of is maybe something in like the oh yeah, no problem at all. Yeah, hopefully it'll be a cool thing that you guys can use. There's lots of features like that that are pretty neat to kind of integrate into some of this other stuff. And so let's break down like what modern like really is, right? In lots of different contexts, right? Like modern is usually a depiction of a particular type of architectural style, or it is of and having like the modern conveniences. So if we were to think about like what is a modern throne room, and then we're also going to be talking about like what is like the vampire style of thing, right? So we're assuming that's probably, especially because it's a throne room, it's going to be something of particular opulence, right? Like we're going to have a lot of over-the-top decorations, perhaps, and maybe even this like element of grandeur for it. And so as we begin to build this out, these are the kind of like narrative choices that I will oftentimes make if I was going to be creating something that is. Let's move this out of the way, and we can bring this all the way back up to our original element here, right? So we're probably going to do like some sort of cool tiled floor, and then we're going to do a rather, especially try to make it modern, we might even use like some more industrial type walls, right? We can have like big windows and whatnot, but probably not. Probably not going to have, we want it to still probably feel pretty well enclosed. We might do interesting shape room, and then we can do lots of decorative kind of carpets and whatnot on the floor. So the first thing we'll do, let's look up tile. This is probably going to pull up a lot of stuff because there's probably a lot of like different types of tiles and stuff. I should probably do like tile floor or tile fill actually. So we'll let this search for a second because it's going to pull up a lot of different stuff. I do have a lot of images loaded into this. So let's go tile floor. And we will have, let's see here. That is for that. Whoops. Let's try that again. And we might want to try tile fill as well. Let's just do something simple like this one, I think. Yeah. So we'll switch back over to our fill. We'll grab and we'll drop this in here. And then we're going to want to do some sort of wall. So let's do wall brush. Oh yeah, maybe we'll do like brick. We could kind of go through some of these things, I think, and something like this might work well. I think you want to do something that's kind of clean, something that doesn't seem as though it's has too much decay or whatnot. Yeah, I think that this might work well, something like this. So yeah, and then we can use some additional kind of interior elements and whatnot. But this will be something that we can kind of like build off of. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over into my grid system, and let's just turn our grid on, but lower down our opacity here. And this is going to give us that frame of reference, right? I'm going to make this a bit smaller, I think, maybe something like that. We only need to do it about a grid size wider or wide. We don't want it to be too wide. I think then it will be too much, right? And I think what we'll do is let's start off with a big round room. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Control, Shift, and Alt, and I'm going to build this out from here. Maybe something like this. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to switch over into this mode, and I'm going to grab these ones, and let's move this out. And again, I'm going to hold down Control so I can kind of snap to the grid. We want this like raised area up here that we can kind of build from, right? Now, if I come down in here and I delete this, all that's going to do is flatten out the area here. And so you can kind of manipulate the image in a lot of different ways. And I'm actually going to, like change the shape of this a little bit, but we're just going to start off with this. Is going to give us a lot of things. And then back here, again, I'm going to delete these, and that's going to flatten that out. So we're going to have this nice little raised area up here. Maybe we'll do some steps up to that. I'm not going to worry too much about doors or anything along those lines quite yet, because what we'll actually do, and we can kind of do that right now, is I'm going to grab my rectangle tool and we'll switch over to the add, kind of like I was talking about before. And again, we can hold down Control, and we'll do like a walkway kind of down through here, and then we can build that into a door. Maybe we'll have like a little bit of a chamber on the outside here as well. And if we wanted to do some additional kind of elements as it moves through, we could easily do that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into here, and I'm just going to move this. I want to make sure that the tiles seem to make a little bit more sense. We don't want to have these elements that seems like it's a little bit off, right? So what we're actually going to do is let's move this to something like that, I think. Now, the great thing about the way that this system works is that we can always move back into and adjust a lot of these elements as we progress. So if we ever decide that we want to add more rooms or add additional kind of elements to this base, we always can. And to ensure that that is possible, I'm actually going to leave this on its own separate layer, right? So that I don't have to worry about accidentally interfering with it, because we're going to be doing a lot of other fill elements with like rugs and whatnot. Carpeting, we'll do like a nice little carpet. But this way I can always just come back into here, and let's say, for example, if I want to grab this and move it, let's make it a little bit wider on either side. I can really easily do that. And the other thing that it will allow me to do is, even if I come back in much later, right? Like if I come back in and I have additional elements that I've been working on, or if I close this down, what I can actually do is I can just grab this and it will load up all of the parameters that I've kind of set here, so I can instantly kind of add to that once again, right? It's going to grab all of that information and set it up for me. So let's create a new painting layer, and we'll put this, any of these additional elements kind of on top of this. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to be building like this raised area that's up, where we're going to put like the throne and whatnot, and then we can do like some steps that kind of lead up to it and so on, and do decorations around it. So I think we're going to be using a lot of the stuff that we have in the castle pack. So let's just go right on over there. So here you can see we have a whole bunch of different decorative kind of fills and whatnot. We have like checkered floors and so on. So we might want to do some different types of materials to help differentiate between these elements. So the next thing I'm going to do in this area here, let's go to our decorations, and let's go to we should have some like stairs and steps and whatnot. And so let's go into our stamp mode, and I'm just going to grab this and we'll rotate it here. This is actually 4 by 5, which is pretty good. And I'm just going to stamp in, let's see here. We want to do like here and something like that, right? And I'm moving these because I want them to, I want to kind of match this up, right? Here's our center line, but it seems to be off from our grid a little bit, our center line. So I think what I'm actually going to do, let's switch back over. And this is what I was talking about before. Keeping these separate makes it really easy for us to go back and forth. So let's change the scaling on this a little bit so that we can manipulate this, because this is more of the center here, right? So if we were to like come over like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's like 7. So what I'm actually going to do is move this over 1. And that's going to work pretty good for us, I think. So now I can come back up into here, holding down control, make sure that we're snapping to the grid so that we can kind of line everything up here. And then I can come back down into here and readjust this stuff a little bit and line that right up. Now this is going to look a little bit off right now. We have very similar colors and whatnot, but we're going to be adjusting these colors as we go along. So we're not going to worry about that too much right now. We're just kind of laying out our really basic shapes and laying out the general conceptual ideas of everything that we're kind of putting together here in a really base way. So now we can go back to our fills, and maybe what we'll do is grab something. Yeah, maybe what we'll do is like do like some sort of like wooden element. That we can kind of drop in up top here. And we're going to switch back over to our rectangle mode. We'll make sure we turn our stroke up. Actually, let's turn our stroke on, but let's put it on to our line so that way we can create like a little bit of a border around it. And I think what we'll do, let's go with something like this, these wider kind of boards, and we'll switch back over. And we could also do it with the same kind of floor as before, but I want to have some good separation between some of these items. And we're going to be layering a lot of stuff on top of them anyway. And we could also come up with a different border too if we wanted to have like a molding or something around the outside. But on this new layer here, I'm going to make sure that I'm in the normal mode here. And I'm not going to hold down control. I'm just going to drag out a shape here. That line might be a little bit too strong for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this. And I'm going to zoom in a little, and I'm going to make that stroke a bit smaller. And then we're going to drag out something like this. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to change the shape of this now so that kind of fits in the shape that I'm trying to do over here. And that looks pretty good. We got a nice little like layout here. Let's see if we have any railings in here. We do have some stuff like this that we can use. And what we want to do is we want to create some railing along the edges here a little bit, and maybe even a little bit along here. So maybe something that's going to come in this kind of shape here. So we want something that's pretty easy for us to lay down, maybe something like that. And we can again experiment with this, and if it doesn't seem to fit for us, we can certainly try something else. So let's turn off our fill. Let's move back into our stroke, and we'll grab this. And again, that's a little bit too large for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold down Control and snap to the grid, something like that. And I'm going to reverse the direction so it kind of starts from down here, so we get a very similar kind of element. And you can see this is what actually, and we should probably talk about this here. Let's remove this and let's go back into here. So the corner elements, what we actually want is a rounded one. And so again, we want to do something like this. You can see it gets a little bit wonky here. So again, this is where we kind of experiment because it does calibrate around the corners a little bit here. So what we might want to do is do something like this. And then we might want to grab it like here and move it down. And what we could actually do, actually, you know what? Let's leave this part off. I think that right there looks pretty decent. And I think that we might have some things that we can kind of place over. As you can see here, we have the stone pillars. And the reason why we have that is if we want to move back over into here, and we can shrink this down to the appropriate size, and we can place these right on top here as these kind of end pieces. And so you're welcome to kind of build the stuff out as you progress here. And we have some nice decorations. So we can probably pretty much just stay right into this castle pack here while we do our creation. Yeah, I think that's going to work out pretty well for us. Now again, trying to make this seem like a modern area, right? The context of it kind of changes a little bit, but we can kind of deal with that as we kind of progress here, right? Now on this same layer, this is going to be all of our base stuff that's going to be like slightly above our ground floor area here. And so here again, we can go in a lot of these fills and whatnot. What I use them for is like creating like these rather regal rugs and whatnot. But we do have some other rug elements that are already kind of like pre-created here. And we also have carpets. So we have ones like this that have lots of kind of like design and feeling to them. So if we switch back over into something like this, as you can see, we could certainly kind of add this in here. But let's say we want to do something that is not just these like throw rugs that kind of go down, but what we can actually do, and this is one of the things that I will do is I'll use something like this or this one for the texture itself, right? So we can go back into our fill. Let's turn our stroke off, or actually let's go back to our line stroke here and go into our fill, and we can drop this down. Now on this same exact layer, we could even do it on the steps themselves, because what we can actually do is lower down the opacity. So any of those lines from the steps themselves are kind of come through. So we'll kind of build this out here in a little bit, right? So on this particular area here, we're going to use our rectangle tool. And again, maybe we're going to have it come up something like this. And we'll have this like nice long kind of carpet that goes all the way down the center of our element here. And you can see with our line on it, we instantly kind of get this feeling here. And we can come back into our area over here after the fact, and we can lower down that opacity to maybe something like this so that we get kind of that feeling here. And you can see here, what we want to actually do is I'm going to grab this and this one, and holding down Control, we want to kind of line this stuff up here. And you can see that we're a little bit off on some of our dimensions down here. So again, we can switch back over to here really easily. And we can grab this stuff. And again, we can just fix that right up there. We can kind of pull this into where we think. And any time here, any of this stuff, when it feels a little bit off for us, or if there's something that isn't quite working, we can just come back and readjust it as we progress here. Now, what we're going to do is we're gonna add in some additional little elements in here, or actually we're going to subtract some little elements in here to give this a little bit more shape as it moves down throughout the steps. And then we're going to finalize the feeling of it with some nice shadows on the steps themselves and whatnot. But right now we're just kind of roughing everything else out, right? But what we can do is we can come in here and let's go into our subtraction mode. And we don't want to do it that way. So what we want to do, and this is where having these things separate can really help out. So what we can do is we can just grab this and move it over to the side here. And I'm going to keep it kind of lined up here so I can have a pretty good understanding of where it is. And what I'm actually going to be doing here is I want to just be creating some of those points by which that we can manipulate the image, right? And then we can kind of readjust once we move it back in there. But if we try to erase with some of these static images there, they're going to get moved as well. The other thing that we can do is we can put this on its own particular layer, which we might want to do that as well. But we're going to do it this way for the moment. And so all I have to do is come in here and whoop, seems that let's do it on its own layer then. So let's delete that. And let's go back over into our painting mode here, and we're going to create a new painting layer. We have everything all set up here, so we can do this right in place now. And so let's just, we don't want to subtract. We want to create a new one. And now we can go back into our subtraction mode. And we want to move out some of this on the edge here. We can actually, let's do it this way. And again, we're not going to worry too much. We're going to be readjusting this stuff here in a moment. But this is just going to give us some elements by which that we can manipulate these things around. And what we're really going to be doing is moving some of these. It looks like that we've gotten a lot of extra occluders that we don't need. Oh, it's because of the rounded edge. See how it's rounding it? So what we could actually do is make sure that that doesn't happen by coming into here. Let's grabbing that again, and we can go back into our here, and we want to make sure that we have a mitered edge here, right? And then when we come in and subtract, you can see we have a single element there. But basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating some little elements like this, and then we're going to be bringing it back out, right? So basically what it's going to symbolize here is where it kind of goes down over the steps here. And if we kind of move out here, let's move into this realm, and you can see what we're actually getting here is a little bit of that feeling that it's kind of moving over here. So we just want to make sure that we line up with the actual elements themselves. And we get this kind of pattern here where it's folding down over the steps. And this is going to feel, let's move back into here, and let's lower down that opacity a little bit. And we want to make sure that this is a little bit consistent, but it doesn't have to be like super consistent, right? So we want to make sure that these are all probably a lot closer to these elements like this. Just this kind of subtle jaggedness around the outside. And we could probably even do it more like this, actually, to make it less jagged and a little bit more pleasing to look at. Yes, that's feeling pretty good. And all we have to do is come back in here, and we have our subtraction mode. And what we actually do is we're just creating these pieces that we can kind of move, right? So if we delete something like that, so we can kind of move it to something like this. And then when we add our shadow in there, that's going to add a lot to each element, huh? Yes, we're rolling out the red carpet for you, Drake. We knew that you were going about to arrive. And I'm going to go back in here, and again, I'm just going to do a couple of these. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And I think that's going to be fine for us. We don't have to go too overboard, but you're always welcome to do this. And what you could actually do is if you wanted to create like steps with this already over the top of it, add in a whole bunch of different elements, like we could probably do that as well. And then you could export that image and have one that's already ready to go whenever you needed carpet-covered steps. You do the same thing with all of the different elements. So the same thing that we could do along the edges, right? What we can actually do, and we can go into our subtraction mode, and with the line tool selected, you can actually kind of draw out some elements like this, and then we can come in, and there's probably a little bit too much stuff going on here, but you can create some little variations if you want to. Things where the carpet might be a little bit get some nice little bumps and whatnot along the edges, and it can give you some really cool variations, as you can see here, where you get, it's not quite so perfect, but certainly that's not something that you necessarily have to do. I tend to go in and then I'll add little shadows in there and whatnot. But something that you can kind of do for fun. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add some texture over the top of this. And we might do a little bit more other kind of elements on there as well. But how I'm going to do that is I'm going to go back into the castle map pack, and some of these fill elements are just these like designs. And so we're going to grab one of these designs and we're going to replace our fill here. And then right on the same layer here, I'm going to switch over to the rectangle. And we're just going to, oh, we want to make sure we're not in subtraction mode. We're in normal mode. And we're going to just, oh, we want to make sure we also don't have any sort of stroke. And draw out our pattern over the top here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over into here, and we're going to lower down that opacity so we just get like this. And we're also going to fade out the edges here a little bit. It looks like that we have to let's do it this way. Yeah, we get a nice little pattern in there. We might want to do maybe like a border pattern as well. So what I think what we'll do is create a new painting layer. Do something like this. Subtract the center. And then we can manipulate this out a little bit. Yeah, that's pretty cool. Oh, hey, Landrast. And again, any sort of adjustments that we want to do, we can always come back into here. You do not need to have the appropriate fill element to do the subtraction. You can do the subtraction with any sort of element that you have kind of going on there. And we're going to be on this layer where this is where we have these elements. And so what we can actually do is we want to create some additional of these little bits. Where we have a little bit of some inconsistencies, and this is where it kind of makes it feel a little bit more realistic. I wouldn't say realistic, but it gives it a little bit more of a lived-in feel. That things that get moved around. It's not exactly perfect, and I think that that kind of adds a little bit to it. We can even do a little bit up here as well, and maybe even especially on some of these corners where you might get some folds and whatnot. And what we'll actually do is we'll go in underneath and we'll add in a little bit of shadow kind of coming out from underneath there, and that'll help accentuate that a little bit more as well. Now that we have all of these kind of base elements kind of going on here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put in a layer of shadow on this elements, right? All the stuff that's kind of lower. And these will be inconsequential to whatever the decorations that we kind of put on top. So we'll add in some like pillars and whatnot. Well, actually, let's do that now. Let's add in some pillars. So right in here, I think that we have some pillars, some like columns and whatnot. But I think let's do some that have a little bit of an angle to them to give this place a little bit more of a constructed feeling. I'm going to put them on this layer and we'll stamp them in. Well, actually, we might even want to do something like this. We can put some urns and stuff around as well. Well, let's experiment here a little bit. I'm thinking something like this will make it a little bit larger. And we'll do something like that, and then we can flip it. And I'm just holding down Control so we can snap to the grid, and we can stay a little bit more consistently across. And you can see this is going to give us a little bit more of that feeling that there is some depth here, but without even putting in shadows yet. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into this layer here, which is, I'm going to do these incidental kind of shadows that are going to be coming out from underneath some of this other stuff. So let's grab this image down here. I'm going to grab it and drop it into here. So actually, we're going to be going on to this layer. And I'm going to be making this a bit darker. And we're going to lower down its opacity quite a lot. And I'm going to make this a bit oblong. Lower down my opacity a bit more. And you can see we've instantly started to create some separation between these elements. And let's make this a bit smaller, but we're going to make this a lot longer here. And now let's make this round once again. And we'll do some coming out from underneath. Make this a little bit something like this. That's looking pretty good. Now I want to go all the way up to this this top layer here, and I'm going to add in, well, actually, underneath the rug itself here in some areas. I want to do some of this stuff kind of poking out. And then we can come all the way up to the top here. And again, I'm going to make this quite oblong, even further. Let's do something like and you can see that now with that little bit of shadow, how much the rug is going to start to look like it's going to be coming down over these steps, right? And I'm just going to do like some of this kind of goes across here like this, right? And we can even make this a little bit narrower. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. And now I'm going to do a little bit on the inside of these. And see this one's up a little bit too tall, so I'm just going to pull it down in like that. And we should do some on the outside as well here. Nice. Now these are all of the elements where you're going to get these like incidental kind of shadows from the form that is underneath of them. So basically what we're going to be doing now is adding in all the different decorations and whatnot. So I think the first thing that we should probably do, and the most important thing, is we're actually going to be adding in the throne, right? So why don't we build that throne like we did the Lich's chair on the external portion in the image creation element that we're going to have over here. So let's build that. And so we're going to pull up this little work area over here. And I don't know, I'm sure that we have. I think what I'm actually going to do is construct it out of some of these elements like this. And then we can add in some additional kind of like stuff on top, right? I think that's going to work out really well for us. So let's create a new painting layer. And we're going to start off with our little bit of a base here. And so what I'm actually going to do, let's grab like this again here. We'll go over into our stamp tool. I'm going to rotate this. Actually, I think I'll grab this one. And again, I'm going to make this a bit larger because we're going to be reducing its size down. And this is going to actually like be the seat itself, right? There'll be the front and the seat. And we can grab something like this and create like the cushion for it. And so we're going to turn this off and make this like 3 by 3. And we'll put this like maybe like right here. And then we can start to build out all of the other elements that we're going to be using here. And I think what we can actually do is use like some of this kind of stuff. So if we grab that, drop it down here, we can rotate it. And this will be, we might even want to bring it in a little bit, something like that. And then we can flip it. Yeah, something like this. And we can start to build like the back of it and whatnot. And I'm thinking we could use maybe something like this. And what we'll do is we'll change it. Let's make the width like that, and this like this. We might even want to, actually, I'm going to grab this. Let's make a new layer. And we might want to be able to put some stuff in between. And we might even want to make it a little bit wider. So it kind of goes across the entire thing. And then we can come back in. What we can actually do in this aspect, see, what we can do is we can create a new painting layer. And we'll come over here and no, what we'll do is we'll keep it in the stamp. We'll do this again. Make this rather. No, I think what we actually want to do is no. We want to angle this in a little bit, so we can probably just create like a back cushion, maybe. Because what we can actually do, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it this way. We'll turn off our stroke, and we'll put it into our fill area right here. We're going to draw out a little section. And the reason why we're going to be doing it this way is here. Let me just kind of show you. And we can make this larger so it kind of encompasses the majority of what we want to do. But if we come into our layers tab, we can squash this, right? And if we come back into our painting tab here, we can angle this. So what we can actually do here is, let's move it over here, is we can put each piece where we want it to be. And then we can manipulate this in such a way. And we can come back into here. Let's turn our fill off, and let's just put a stroke on this. Yeah, that'll be pretty good. And let's do some little, let's do something like this. Like here. And then what we can actually do is build in, if we wanted to do like some additional kind of decorations and whatnot, we could do all kinds of fun stuff. But I think that that'll be pretty good. Let's add in some our shadows on top of this, though. So I'm going to grab this, and we'll drop this in here. And, well, I think we can probably do all of our shadows on this top layer here. And we can just do something like that. And again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this rather oblong. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. That'll be a nice little a throne for us. So what we can do now is we can export this. We'll make sure we do it as a PNG file. And I'm just going to write in throne. And now if we come back into our campaign folder, we want to make sure we hit refresh. And here is our throne image. And so what we can do is now we can come back over into this area. We can drop this guy right down here, and you can see here's our throne. And we can make this to an appropriate size and whatnot. Whatever we feel is appropriate for our setting here. I'm actually going to, so here is our width is 3.4 and our is 2.5. So let's actually make this a little bit squatter, I think. Not that much. 2.5 is pretty good. And we can just drop that right in there. Super cool. We cannot export to WebP yet or WebM. So that might be something that is coming in the future. But currently, we can only do JPEG and PNG files. So if you need to have any sort of alpha channel, do PNG, otherwise JPEG. But hopefully that will be coming. Great, our throne room's coming right along here. Once we add in our other shadow content and make this kind of feel as though that it's part of the surrounding scene, it'll match in a lot better. But one of the things that we're doing is we're using a lot of the same elements to build the stuff with the rest of the the textures and the color palettes that are inside of this one particular art pack that we seem to be using at the moment. And so therefore, all of this stuff seems to be much more cohesive, right? Like you can see how well this throne kind of fits in with the same kind of color scheme, shapes, and whatnot, because we built it with these elements that are inside of this art package. So yeah, that's awesome. So I'm going to take a really quick break here. I'm gonna refresh my coffee and get some more water. So we're about halfway through today, and then when we come back, I think what we'll do is we'll start working on some other kind of cool elements that we can add in. Maybe some tapestries or some decorative cloth things that are kind of going around and whatnot. And maybe we'll do, because this is supposed to be like a vampire-esque like area, we'll start to make it a little bit more gothic and come up with some pretty cool ideas for that. So if you guys want to hang out for just a moment while I take a short break, and when I come back, we'll continue on the creation process here. We'll really bring this to the forefront. I want to do add some more texture and whatnot to some of these areas as well. But we got our base down pretty well here conceptually, and we're going to build some different elements. So just hang out for a few moments, and I shall be right back. All right, we're back. Thanks everyone for hanging out while I took a short little break there, stretched my legs and refreshed my beverages. So let's get right back into doing this stuff here. So what I'm actually going to do is now we put down this throne here. Let's add in a little bit of a shadow so we can bring it into the same kind of context as some of the other elements here. Just so that we have, let's lower down this a bit. And I'm actually going to create like a little bit of a shadow from the back here. And let's do a little bit more behind it. Get some of that ambient occlusion. And then I think I'll even do a little bit more on these guys here. Yeah, that's pretty good. And now what I think we're going to do is we're going to build like some of these like tapestry kind of things that are going to be like this. So we can kind of create our own areas there. I wonder if I have any kind of pre-created ones. I don't really think so. We do have some of these kind of like texture, but these are more like ragged elements. So I think what we'll actually do is just build our own. We can kind of do that. Like if we think about the way that it's going to look, right? And we might even want to look at like we have some of these kinds of elements from Interior Map Pack 2. And these ones from the Victorian one, which we could use bits of this. But this kind of stuff might actually just work as is. So, but we can build some additional kind of elements as well. So let's grab maybe something like this, and I'm going to flip it this direction. As you can see, we can kind of just stamp this, maybe something like that. That's a little bit too large, I think. I think it should be narrower. Yeah, maybe like this. But I think we should build some as well. And what we can do is let's go into our other area over here. And I'm just going to grab these and delete them. And let's go over into our stroke area here and our fill. And we're going to go back into, I'm going to actually use that, that same carpet again as our fill element. And we're going to create some nice shapes here with it, right? And so what I'm actually going to do is just kind of pull out maybe something like this. And I'm going to have a little bit of a stroke on the outside here. Well, we can actually just use some of our subtraction elements and whatnot. So what we can actually do from here is if we hold down Alt, we can kind of pull it out from the center, create a shape, something like this, right? Basically what we want is to have this kind of shape that's going to be feeling as though that it's like hanging on the wall itself. So if we look at this, right, like we get these kind of shapes, but I want ones that are going to be a little bit more elongated. So something that we can maybe put around and get that feeling of like opulence and then have it kind of layered over the top of some of these other stuff. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start using the grid here a little bit. Let's snap that one to there, and let's do this one to the middle. And what we're going to do is we're going to start to create some like folds here. And you'll see how this is going to kind of play out here in a moment. I'm going to say that this is probably the middle, right? So we're going to make sure that these stay pretty centrally located. And we want to kind of mimic, but we don't want it to be exactly the same on either side. We want to have a little bit of some inconsistencies and whatnot. And we want this to be maybe something like this. That's pretty good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come over into here and we're going to squash this down a little bit. As you can see, we're going to bring that. This is going to be that kind of feeling. And what we're actually going to do here, and you can kind of see this as we begin to manipulate. We want this to be not quite so abrupt. We'll add in some shadows and whatnot to give it that feeling that it's got some elements. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so that the texture is a little bit less. Yeah, maybe something like that. I'm also going to make this darker. And maybe we'll make it a little bit more on the brown side. So let's something like that. And I'm controlling the colors by using R, G, and B and using my mouse wheel. And then we're going to add in some highlights and some shadows and whatnot. So the next thing we're going to do is go over into our stamp, and we have our shadow kind of all set up here. And I'm going to lower down this opacity a bit. And we're going to do some base ones kind of coming in. And I actually want this to be a little bit more narrow so I can kind of control it a little bit better. But I'm going to be building out some little things like this. Let's actually do this on a separate layer here. And I'll show you why I'm going to be doing this on a separate layer here in a second. I'm just kind of stamping this out. We'll make it a little bit larger as it goes. And you can see it makes it feel like it's got a really nice little like fold in it. And I'm only going to be doing one side like this, and we'll add in some of this, maybe a little bit right here. And this is pretty symmetrical. So what I'm actually doing here is I'm just going to do one side, and then I'm going to duplicate this. We're going to want to add in a little bit of highlights as well, probably. So I'm going to do that all on the same layer. Now I'm going to make this like all the way to the white side. Yeah, that's pretty good. And now what I'll do is I'm going to duplicate this layer, right? And then I'm going to come up over into here and I'm going to flip it. And so now I can just move it over. Did that not flip correctly? I'm going to say that that probably did not work as intended here. Let's delete this layer. Let's try it again. Let's grab this layer. Let's duplicate it. We'll move it over like this. And if we flip it, yeah, see, it doesn't seem to. Oh, right, because it's stamped. It's going to maintain its orientation. That's right. So we're just going to go back and we'll have to do the other side as well. But that's not a problem. It'll help us give it some additional kind of variations as well. I think we'll do a couple more like larger ones. Yeah, like this. And now we'll do let's do a couple of highlights on the side as well. What this is going to do is just kind of add in a little bit more shape to this, right? So we get some ins and outs here a little bit. Perfect. Yeah, that's pretty good. We could even do, if we wanted to, we could create like some like tassels and ties and whatnot, but I think that this will be fine for us. So let's export this. And again, we're going to do it as a PNG file. And now we'll call this just like cloth. And going back into our campaign folder, which is where I have it to be saved to, we're going to refresh this. And here we have it. Now let's come back into our throne room and go over to our stamp. We can grab this, and now you can see we have this nice kind of element here. We want to make sure that we have some separation here, so I'm going to make it a bit darker. And so you can see I'm going to kind of match it up to the colors that we have here. And what I can actually do is I can make this a little bit more narrow if I want to. Control the size of it here a little. Whoop, didn't want to stamp one down there. I think what we should actually do is, I'm going to remove this for right now. We should do another painting layer. I'm going to control click these. So it looks like our, actually, you know what we should do is, I'm not sure why they're both getting deleted when I do that, but what I'll do is I'll do this and then I'm going to flip it. Yeah, it looks like that this side needs to be moved in a little bit, I'm going to say. So let's do that. Make some adjustments to our building here. Come back up into here. I think let's make it not quite so wide here. Let's see, we want it to be somewhere between here, so let's do it like 68. Yeah, that's pretty good. And now we can actually go back to our curtain and we'll grab this one again. I think this one. And we can put this over the top here. Oh, actually, we'll put it underneath like this. Yeah, that's pretty good. Now we can add in some additional kind of decorative elements. I think we should do like some corner pieces, right? Let's go back into our castle map pack. We can go into our decorations here. We have things like suits of armor and whatnot. Um, I think that we should do something here as well. Maybe we can put some things here. Well, you know what we should do, if especially we're going to be doing this like a vampire area, right? Let's take one of these, and what we can actually do is make it look like it's full of blood. So let's remove this. And so we'll stamp this guy right down here. And now we're going to add in some fluid on the inside of here. We can do that a whole bunch of different ways, but I'm just going to paint it in using some of these other elements here. So I'm going to come back over into here. Oh, we could actually probably even use this. And so what we can do is have our circle here. We do want to have like a little bit of a stroke to it, I think. And so we'll make it a little bit smaller though, and kind of do, we don't want to do it that way. We want to add a new element here. I think we will do it something like that. Now let's make this quite a bit darker, maybe somewhere in here. And again, I'm actually going to let's make it a bit smaller. Yeah, something like that. Add a little bit of texture to it. And to make something look wet, what we're going to do that, we're going to use some heavy specular highlights and whatnot. We could even do like some texture kind of stuff in here as well. So let's go over to our winter map pack. Let's see here, winter. Go into our effects here, and I'm going to grab something like this. Let's grab that one. And I'm going to go into my tint, and I'm just going to grab a color from here. So this is kind of match up. And we'll do some of this kind of stuff. We're going to do this right over the top to obscure that. And this will be like bits that are kind of on the side here a little bit. We might even want to do some here. We can lower down that opacity. What I'll do is I'll actually use this to do my specular kind of highlights here. So I can lower down this a little bit and yep, that's pretty good. And then we're going to do some softer kind of shadows. So I'm going to grab this and we'll lower this down and then lower down the opacity quite a bit. And I'm just going to do like a larger kind of shadow in through here. Then we also want to do a little bit of shadow just on some of this on the outside here. Make it feel like it's a little bit like thicker. And then we'll add in a little bit uh, along this edge. I'm going to lower down my opacity even further so I can kind of make this feel a little bit more gradual. And that's pretty good. Now let's export this. And we want to make sure we do a PNG. You're not seeing the pop-up because I'm only actually streaming FG itself, and so, and it just comes up with a pop-up, and you can save it to wherever you wish. And let's call this Blood Bowl, and we can save that. You can see that's exported right out here. And now we can go into our campaign folder. Make sure that we refresh it here. And so here we have this element. It's all been exported for us. Now we can come into here, and look, we've created our own little element here. And boom, and boom. Kind of place that on these pedestals. And then we can create like all of the cool kind of effects. Actually, you know what we should do is do this on a separate layer here. So that we can add in a little bit of shadows pretty easily underneath. Let me just show you what that's going to look like here. We'll lower down our opacity and our element again here, and I'll just kind of drop this in underneath. That's going to give us a little bit of separation from this other stuff. Accentuate that out a little bit. And then we can go on to this layer, and again, I'm going to lower down the opacity. We're just going to exaggerate this one. We're going to move in a little bit. We want to make sure we have a little bit of that highlight on the outside there. We could grab in some additional textures and whatnot and kind of place that in there as well. But you can see how easily it is. You can kind of create any of these elements that you want to, and kind of throw all of that stuff in there. And we can even do an effects layer and add a little bit of like ripple in there or whatnot, or an animated image and so on. So let's go back up into here. Let's do it here. I'll just add in a little bit on these as well. A little bit more for this. I think we'll move this one. Actually, we don't even need that one. Yeah, very cool. Look at all of this stuff that we've kind of done here. Now what I'm actually going to do is, here we have this stuff, and here we have this stuff. So I think on this particular layer, I want to do a little bit of a shadow around all of my wall areas down through here. I'm actually going to go into here. I'm going to turn off my fill. I'm going to go into my stroke, and I have, nope, not that one. Whoops. Let's go, I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to darken that up and lower down that opacity, maybe to something like this. And then I'm actually going to make it a bit smaller as well. And with my line, I'm just going to hold down Control, and I'm just going to snap. I do not want it to be that. It's like that's going to stick around. Hold on. I'll finish this out, and then we can make that adjustment. And I think if we just close this down, looks like that we got, interesting. Oh, here it is. There we go. And now what I can actually do is kind of come in and readjust this. And as you can see, there's some of this stuff, and we can just move these until we get this to kind of work the way that we anticipate it to. I think that we can kind of remove. Oh, let's say that these, yeah, we need to have it a little bit more. Let's try that again, actually. Let's go back into here. Let's do it on its own layer too, so that we can manipulate it a little bit easier. And I'm going to hold down Control, and we're going to go like around. I think less lines might be better. I think that it might be too. Actually, let's make it smaller. Let's make the let's turn this off, and let's make this like 2. Yeah, maybe something like this. And I'm going to be doing it this way so I can adjust the opacity on the layer itself. And we can line these right up here. And now let's go into our Layers tab, and now let's lower down that opacity. We get this nice kind of gradient around the outside here. Yeah, that looks much better. Adds us a little bit of separation from our floors. I think let's go into the what other kind of elements do you guys think that we should put into this? You know what I want to do next though is I want to add in some texture overlays here. And I think we'll do that on this layer here. Let's go into the winter art pack again. break some things up here a little bit. Ooh, yeah, that's cool. Cameras and stuff. I like that. We'll add some of that stuff in for sure. Yep, I think that's a good idea, actually. So yeah, let's make a camera. And what I'll do is I'll make a rectangle here. Let's do something like this. Make this a little bit more. Yeah, something like that. Actually, we don't want to do the end yet. Well, actually, what we want to do is this, right? We want to do another little rectangle here. And then we want to add and then we can bring this down to something like that. Let's bring this back a little bit. We don't want to add. We want to make a new thing. And then here, I'm going to hold down Alt and bring it out from here. I think something like that. And then we'll do, let's make this somewhere in this vein. Oh yeah, Jabba the Hutt's palace. And we can add in some additional kind of little elements here, like these little incidental bits or whatever. I think what we'll do is just bring this in a little bit. And let's create some additional kind of elements on top here, right? So we'll do like Yeah, like this. And then we can do some like chords and whatnot. But we could even do like a little like mount back here. So what we can do is, because it should have like a little arm and a mounting system, right? So maybe what we'll do is we'll do it like this. We'll do it over here. And so we'll do something like that. And now we can add to this thing and we'll create our little, this one should be added to that. But what we'll actually do is let's change some of these first. We're going to make this one black and this one a little closer to it. Well, let's just add something like this. Yeah, very cool. Now we'll add a little bit of like highlights and shadows to it, whatever, right? You can see how easily you can kind of manipulate the system and build whatever you want to. And so what we can actually do is let's make this a little bit more narrow. Give it a little bit of shape there, and we'll line this up too. We'll bring this right to there, so it makes a little bit more sense. Like you have this interactive kind of. Actually, you know what we should do is also these right here. We'll bring it to here. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. And now we'll grab. Let's go over into here, and we have our stamp tool here. And so what I'm going to do is we're going to make this all the way to white. We'll make it a little bit like this. And we can make this like a, well, actually, let's do here first. We'll do a 4, we'll make it. Well, you guys can see how easily you can kind of make, oh, well, thank you. Yeah, it's what I do. But you guys can see how easily you guys can make any image that you want to. And I'm not using any real base images whatsoever. All I'm doing is using the built-in tools themselves. And the real beauty of this system is that, as you can see here, I can just kind of move this stuff around. We don't need to have, you don't have to have a complete clear-cut understanding of this stuff. You can just kind of continually manipulate it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these ones here. We can do some on this. And then I'll do a little bit on the front of this section right there. And we'll make this round once again. Just kind of do a little bit like that. So now we've created a really basic creation here, right? Now we're going to export it. And we make sure we do it as a PNG file, and I'm just going to call it camera. And now we can go into our campaign folder, which is where I'm saving all of this stuff. And we'll refresh. So now we have our nice little camera here. And we'll come back into here. Let's put it on this layer here, I believe, right? Like this is the layer that we have all this stuff on. And we can just drag and grab this guy. And let's make it a size that we might think is appropriate, right? So we want it to be probably something like this. And you can see that's a pretty good little facsimile that we've created of like this camera. And we can put some on these as well. Maybe we'll do something like this. And we'll do a couple on the outside here. And what I'll do is I'll just flip it. And so now we can put one over here. And we'll put one on this one. We'll kind of make it a little bit symmetrical. And we're going to do it like here. And oh yeah, we want to do one down here as well. And we can go to the one lower. And now let's go to, we can do something like wire or cable. Maybe we'll use something like this. And we'll go in back into here and we'll do like this. Again, we're going to make this quite a bit smaller here. And I'm going to make this a lot darker. Oh, this is on the, we're going to want to go here. And we're going to maybe want to do some stuff. Yeah, stuff like this. And now to do like our lasers and whatnot, we can do that just with like an effects, like an effects layer. So we can do, let's create a new effects layer. Let's put this all the way to the top here and go into our effects. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do an adjust colors. And let's crank up something like this, and maybe we'll do it here, something like that. Let's create a mask. And then what you can see here is blur out that edge And maybe we can even do it. We want it to, we have total kind of control over this. See, so something like this. And we can start to do like this network of lasers, maybe. And what we can do is we can create like a little, that one's a little bit too large. Oh no. And how you can handle this is you can just turn them on and off, right? We could make little things where it shoots that up too. I think we should do some running this way as well, right? Like, yeah, I guess maybe we'll do something like that. And we can, then we can build like little elements that are kind of on the inside there. Yeah, I think that would work pretty well. And we can even, if we wanted to duplicate this layer, and we might want to change it to something along the lines or we might even want to do like ocean. where you get these kind of waves of energy that kind of come down through. Oh, cool. We're making a modern kind of vampire throne room with like lasers and whatnot. So what we can actually do here is turn these off. What I would do is I would create a folder, and then we could put these inside of the folder, and then you can turn them both off. So when it gets turned on, you can do that. And now what we can actually do, we only have a little bit of time left here, but let's do our lighting and whatnot, and then we can finish this up next time. So let's go into our area over here. What I'm actually going to do is turn on our lighting, and let's see it as our players would see it. And this is what they would see from the lasers themselves. We can see we can turn that off. And now let's go into our lighting area. I'm going to put in a little bit of ambient light over here. So let's turn it on. And then we're going to bring our ambient light maybe into something like this. And now we can add in some additional kind of lighting elements. And let's move this. Maybe we'll do some of these kind of lights. We'll make them a bit larger. So maybe we'll do, let's do our dim to be something like 16. And then our bright to be like 8. And then let's make our gradient here a little bit more. So it kind of like fills out. And what I'll do is I'll just duplicate that. And then I'll drop another one like here. And this will give us a little bit more of that ambient kind of feel. And let's add in a couple of smaller ones. Like in here, but let's actually, I'm going to go back into my ambient over here, and let's take away some of this color a little bit. Let's bring it into maybe something like this. And let's increase these ones now a little bit. We'll do these lights, these dim to be maybe like 8. Yeah, something like this. Because it would be, we would have this really cool kind of, I probably have no windows, especially if it's, like you don't want to have any sort of issues from light coming from the exterior. So we'd have like these really dark kind of corners here and whatnot. And we can come into here, and if we wanted to create our line of sight like this, and then we could actually come in. I would probably do the columns as terrain. And so we could just do and then we would get some neat interactions from some of the shadows and whatnot. We might not even need. I would play around with this a little bit more and see, because we could delete these, and I think it works still pretty well. If we needed to, we could put some things in there. But I kind of like the way that this is feeling here. Might even want to come in here. Let's go into our painting layer. Might even want to darken up the floor a little bit. Maybe not. Maybe we might want to give it a little bit of a color of its own. Maybe not though. Mess around with that stuff and see kind of how it goes. Yeah, I really like the laser idea and um, the candles and whatnot. What I would actually do is we could bring this down, maybe drop this down below some of this other stuff. So you get this stuff that's kind of interacting above it. And then what we could do is build some sort of little element. We could probably actually just grab um, maybe in the industrial art pack, or actually, we could, yeah, let's do maybe in sci-fi interiors, something that will be a reasonable kind of facsimile of. Whoops, we don't want it over there. We want it over here. Yeah, I might leave some of the that stuff off, but do something like this. Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, I think the cameras worked out really well. And um, we should also do while we're talking about it, we should add in some additional kind of shadow from the cameras themselves, right? So we should actually kind of create in through here um, a little bit of extra of this kind of stuff. You can see how that just kind of feels like it fits in a little bit better. Oh yeah, so if I do something like that, I do use a lot of keyboard shortcuts. So if I do something and you're not sure how I do it, just let me know. So what I do a lot, and this is most of it is in conjunction with the mouse wheel, right? So what I'm doing here, like I can use Control and the mouse wheel. Let me just increase the opacity of this. Control and the mouse wheel to do the size. And let me grab something else, like over here, for example. If I use Shift and the mouse wheel, it will rotate the image. And if we use Control by itself, it'll snap to the grid. And also, if I use A and the mouse wheel, I can change the opacity of the image. R will affect the red value, G the green value, B the blue value, and you can hold them all together to do all of them at the same time, all with the mouse wheel. So all of that stuff in conjunction as we kind of move around and paint stuff, you can kind of see how that's all going to work. So like I'll bring this down, and then maybe what we'll do is do some of these kind of like soft shadows in these corners. Yeah, you bet. So lots of really cool kind of stuff that you can interact with the system with all of that, right? So, and if we go back over, we can see this is how the GM view will be. This is how our players will actually see it. Here's with the line of sight actually enabled. And if we turn the lights off, you can see how much we can kind of add to the atmosphere with the lights themselves. Yeah, I'm going to say that that was a very successful creation of our modern vampire throne room here. So, do you guys have any other questions before we kind of shut down as we're getting to the end of the stream here? If you guys haven't watched before, you can kind of see that we actually made some of the images here, like these blood-filled like vases and these cameras. We just build them, export them as a new image, and then bring them in and create all these things. So we did like these modern kind of camera systems with some lasers and whatnot to make a really cool area here. And then we can just turn these on and off on the fly. I think too, let's go in. I'm going to grab uh, these two lights here, and I'm just going to make that a little bit more subtle. As you can see, here's our these two lights, and I just want them to kind of fade out from there a little bit more. You can see how they kind of affect all of the surrounding areas. All of our lights are additive, and then we also have a little bit of this ambient light. You can see that just gives this nice hue to these darker areas. Oh yeah, yeah. Feel free to raid whatever you think is appropriate, Paulette. Great. So, is there any other questions before we sign off here? Anything else that you guys, if I did something that you're not quite sure how we did it, or all right. Well, if there's no other Nothing else that I can help you guys with? Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. Super fun maps to kind of create. We also finished up some other stuff and went through some different things that we have. So everyone have a great week. We'll be back this next Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, going over all of the art-related stuff inside of Fantasy Grounds Unity. So yeah, thanks everyone. So yeah, go ahead and raid someone if you wanted to, Paulette. And I'm gonna be signing off. So thanks everybody.